Hi there, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the soundbites. Joining me today in studio is Peter Cobb, who I know we're in the same church together. And I found out that he is the author of two very interesting books, and I'm very excited to sit and have Peter join us today and talk about these books and a few other things. Peter, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is great. Very interesting background. Could you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Well, I had most of my career, I worked for the visiting nurses. I was their trade association director. I did that for 33 years. I started my career in the 1970s actually working for the Times-Argus, which is interesting because I now sell 40, 50 years later, I now write one story a week for the Argus. So
That's great.
I started ending where I began. In the meantime, I worked a bit for Washington County Mental Health for a few years, and I worked in Ludlow for a few years. And I worked at what was then the Good Health Center, which I don't think exists anymore. Right. And I worked for the Black River Tribune, which you probably know Will Hunter.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
He was my boss, and he owned the paper. So that's my background. I'm married. I have 2 kids and 7 grandchildren.
What a great background. VNA, you were there when Pat Moulton was there, right?
I was.
I adored that woman.
I was.
And I also did a show recently with Gary Haas from The World.
Yep.
And the Times-Argus back in March, I think. They found a way to collaborate, and they moved into facilities together, and Gary said each one saved the other.
Yeah, funny, I remember when Gary Haas came to Barrie.
Really?
Because he came, it would have been 75, 76, something like that, when I was working for the Times-Argus. And he came in and he introduced himself to John Mitchell.
Yeah, sure.
To let John know that his paper was not in competition with the Times-Argus, but rather another alternative for people. So I do remember the very first day he came into the paper, and I happened to be at my computer.
That would be Gary, saying something kind like that and just non-aggressive. I love Gary. He's great. He's helped me a lot in all the things that I've been involved in. He's always there. Because every time he calls my house, I don't even talk too much. I go, all right, how much? Because he's always selling tickets to something. Yeah. And every time he calls, I can't say no. So I'm like, how much? But apparently that combination is really working very well for them, the Times-Argus in The World. And staff love it, apparently. So that's good.
I'm glad it's working.
Yeah, no, it's great. And the facility they've got is all brand new, and it's not like the house that The World was in with all the up and down stairs. So it's a good thing. And when I Googled your name, this whole article came up about photography, and I thought, oh, how great is that?
Yeah, during the COVID in 2020, with not much to do, I got up early in the mornings. I started taking pictures and took quite a few pictures. And I had no interest in selling them until I wrote my first book. And I wanted to sell my book at the Barrie Craft Show. Yeah. And my wife told me if all I had on the table was one book, it's going to look stupid.
Yeah.
So she convinced me into printing up some of the pictures I have, 8x10s and 11x14s, that kind of thing, Vermont-based pictures, and so I started selling them at craft shows each of the last few years, and it's worked pretty well. In fact, people come to the table because they see the pictures, not because they see the 2 books that I've written. So I started taking a lot of pictures then, and I continue now. I usually have a camera with me at pretty much at all times.
That's great.
I keep a camera in my a small camera in my glove compartment because you never know what you're going to see.
That's great. Good for you. Is there any theme or?
No, they're all Vermont-based themes. The ones that sell are pretty much Vermont-based, at least at the craft shows that I go to. In fact, I have a really nice foliage picture that I took in New Hampshire. And when people pick it up, one person picked it up, for example, and said, oh, I love this picture. I got to buy it. Where was it? I said, New Hampshire. He put it down. My wife said I should have lied. But it's funny. If I tell people, and I've got some balloon pictures, and people assume they're Queegee, but they're not. And I tell them they're not Queegee. They don't want them. So if you go to Vermont Craft Show, you're looking for Vermont-based stuff.
I'll have to check you out. That's great.
Well, I'll be at I won't be at Barrie this year, but I'll be at U32, and I'll be at the St. Johnsbury Crafts Fair show.
When I first moved here, I thought, I hope people realize that every place you look, it could be a picture in Vermont. I mean, there is nothing that wouldn't make a great cover on a book, or it's incredible.
Well,
the
if people are
views
interested in some of my pictures, I do have an Instagram page. It's my name at Instagram.
Oh, cool.
Not all the pictures I've taken, but some of them are on there.
Very nice. We'll have to get some and add them to the video here.
Okay.
I'll go steal a few. So we're here, though, to talk about the 2 books that you wrote, and I don't know whether you want to start with To Alice?
Sure.
Okay, let's
And
start
which
with
I've
To
got here.
Alice.
I will show it to people.
On top of the pile.
To Alice. To Alice is actually based on my work for the 33 years that I spent at the visiting nurses. While I was there, I always said to myself, someday I'd like to write a story to honor the people who do this work. So basically, that's what this book does, sort of. The main theme of the book, the main character, Alice, she has boundary issues, and some people don't know, when I say that, they don't know what I mean.
I was just going to ask you.
Well,
what
what
did you
boundary
mean?
issues are, when you're a caregiver, especially in home care, and in nursing homes too, I think, you can get a little bit closer to the patients that may be good for you and for them. The protagonist, Alice, she brings gifts to her patients. She stays longer than she should, that kind of thing. And although it's wonderful care, there is a line that you shouldn't cross. And it's hard not to. And that theory about the book, the theme of the book, was kind of based on my mother. My mother had 18 hours of home care a week in her last 5 years. She was on the Choices for Care program.
Yep.
And she had the same woman who came in, most 2 or 3 times a week. Well, you get very close.
For real.
And so in home care, keeping that boundary is an issue. The book is not just, however, about a caregiver with boundary issues. It's also about the characters in the book. And then I think there are 6 main characters, and each character gets about 4 or 5 chapters. And we kind of get their life story. Some of them are based on people I know. Some of them are based on people I met as a home care worker. In fact, there's a scene in the book that I saw it when my second year working for the agency. It was in 1981 or 82, I can't remember. And I was asked by one of the agencies, because I've always been taking pictures, I just wasn't selling them. And one of the agencies was then Brattleboro, although they don't have a Brattleboro town agency anymore. They asked if I'd come down and take some pictures that they could use for their brochure.
Nice.
So I said, sure, love to. So I drove down to Brattleboro, and I went around with a nurse for a few visits, and I also went around with a PT. And it was a guy, a man, physical therapist. And in his bag, he had a bag full of records, old-fashioned vinyl records. And they were dance music from the 1940s, Jimmy Dorsey Band, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, what's he doing this for? So when I got there, what he used them for is his patient, what she needed was exercise. Her legs, she was 95, 96, very frail. I doubt if she weighed 100 pounds. And so his job was to have her exercise. Well, the way he did that is when he put the music on, they danced. So when I saw that, unfortunately, it was such a dark place, and I did not bring my flash, so I didn't get any pictures. But in my mind, that scene stuck with me forever. And I remember thinking, if I ever read a book about the VNA or about these nurses, I want to put that in there. So, but in my book, it's a bit reversed, because in real life, it was a male physical therapist and a female patient. In my book, it's a male patient and a female home health aide. So he teaches her how to waltz and how to foxtrot.
And the music that you reference, I mean, I'm sure that's what they remember. Jimmy
Yeah,
Dorsey, and that's sort of their...
Yeah, I think
But
the
they-
music, I do reference some music, but not that. I think in the book, I think I do Otis Redding or something. I can't remember.
that's a little closer.
Yeah, because this is a little bit later. But yeah, that scene and some of the other scenes in there. For example, the book opens with the home health aide finding one of her patients dead. And that's actually based on my mother. My mother was dead. She died
really?
She died in her sleep. Not bad.
Right.
I wouldn't be, to die at 98 in your sleep, that's pretty darn
Yeah,
good.
for sure.
So the home health aide found her, and then the home health agency called me, and that, of course, stuck in my mind too. So I opened the book with the home health aide going to a patient's house and finding one of her patients.
The caregiver concept is something I've been doing a lot here on TV, and my husband's in a Parkinson's group, and so am I, and we have somebody, Alan Rubel.
Oh, I know
Do you
Alan.
know Alan? He wrote the book about caregiving,
yeah.
and he's coming to talk to the group.
Oh, good.
Because it's half caregiver, half people with Parkinson's.
And I read his book.
Have you?
I wrote an article for the Times-Argus on his book.
Oh, wonderful! It's a great. He's coming to talk to them in a week or two, and it's so important. Every time I meet a caregiver, I say, just make sure you take time for yourself, because it's not helping anybody if you're wiped out or not thinking clearly. So
Yeah, so that was what I want to do is to honor those folks who do that kind of care, and also to make the people human. Really, their patients are very human. With,
right.
For example, I have one woman in the book who's turning 100.
Oh,
She's
my
not
Lord.
happy about it because everybody she knows is dead,
Right.
and that was actually based on my mother. My mother died at 98 and change, and the last few years were very difficult, especially after my brother died, when I think my mother was 91 or something
Oh,
like
that shouldn't happen.
So there's that character, and we go through her life, and she's in the book and in my life, my mother, an Italian woman in Rutland, and that was a very group, and we have a lot of scenes in the book of Italian life in the 1930s, and well, in the book it's Providence, Vermont, but it's sort of based on a little bit of Rutland and a little bit of Barrie.
Used to sneak into the Mutua every once in a while
Mutua.
when they opened the doors for women. That was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
I actually, when I was 13, 14, when you're too old to play and too young to work, I used to drive around and I'd go to the Italian club and listen to the guys play bocce in the
Oh, there
backyard.
you go.
Oh, it was interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't realize
I had a bocce
so much
court.
yelling
We
went
had a
on in the
bocce court in
court.
our backyard.
Did you?
Somehow or other he got a hold of these amazing bocce balls. I mean, they were gorgeous. I don't know. I presume they're some kind of wood or something. Yeah, they were. So he built a bocce. I mean, none of my parents were. He's French, and my mother was English, but we had a bocce court in our backyard. So
Well, I used to go
I know
used to
bocce.
go to the Rutland Italian Club was on Grove Street, if I remember, and I used to like to go and just watch the guys play. It was fun.
It was cool. I don't know whatever happened to that, because who knows over the years. So it sounds to me like you've always wanted to write.
Well, I did. In fact, this novel, which is my first published novel, isn't the first one I wrote. It's actually the third. But the first two were terrible. I mean, really terrible.
There you go.
The first novel I wrote, well, when you have a family and you get home at 5 and you put the kids to bed, next thing you know it's 9 o'clock.
Right.
You're just exhausted. But I tried writing one, and it took me 20 years,
Oh, my.
and it was horrendous. It was
Was that
incredibly long.
from you that it was for? Somebody read it
No,
and
I
said,
never sent it to anybody.
Oh.
It was just I knew it was terrible. When you take 20 years to do something, the end has very little relation to the beginning.
I bet.
Although much of that's in this book ended up in this book, and also some of it ended up in here. So for those, it wasn't a total waste, and then I wrote another one after that, was a little bit better, but still pretty terrible. And what I learned from that experience is, you can't just sit down and write a book.
Yeah, no.
It's like anything else. You can't go to a golf course and shoot 71 on your first day. You're lucky to shoot 171.
Right.
So writing a book is a learning experience, and it took me 20 years and a lot of mistakes to get to this point.
That's great.
But at this point, I think even this one, the first draft and the last draft were much different.
Interesting.
I initially did it in the first person, and then I read it over and said, I don't think so. So I rewrote the whole thing in third person and present tense, just because I wanted to show and not tell my story. I wanted things to happen and not me telling them to happen.
I think it's hard in the first. I personally don't enjoy first person books.
I do enjoy them. That's
don't
why I
enjoy
started
them.
it. But then I realized it was too limiting for me, that I could tell a better story if I had a third, especially when I was getting in, as I said, there's 6 characters, and we get a lot of their stories. We get the woman who's turning 100. We get a guy in a wheelchair who's falling in love with a woman. We get a woman who's dying. She's on hospice. And that's as her dying process, her husband gets like kind of worse dealing with it, and her daughter gets better and stronger. And then there's a fellow whose wife left him when he was late 60s, and he let his house go downhill from then on. And we see him 20 years later. So we get their story. So it's
wonderful.
It's equally the story of the protagonist and also her patients and their life stories and how they got to where they got.
How did you manage your characters? Did you write I have a friend of mine in New York. He was a writer, and he would put, what's the word I'm looking, outline. He would outline everything, and then he would take the characters and have a separate page for them and outline, because he would get, like you said, he would get confused after a year
That's
or two.
a good thing to do, and I wish I outlined, but I don't.
Oh.
I do sort of seat of the pants. My one chapter. For this book, I knew the first chapter. It was in my head. Took me, when I sat down to write it, it didn't take me any more time than it did to type, because it was in my head so much.
Yeah.
And I also knew what the last chapter was going to be, but everything in between was a surprise. Outlining would be great. I probably should, but I don't. I didn't for this second novel either. But I did learn the hard way that you got to keep a list of characters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Not for the main character is not a big deal.
Yeah.
But if somebody shows up on page 6, and then they don't show up again till page 212, you probably got their name wrong. They might be Charlotte Powers,
Yeah.
then Chrissy Powers, and you don't even realize it's a mistake.
Right.
So after I did this one, the first draft I didn't do that, but then I went through the proof and I said, whoa. For example, and it's a minor mistake, but one I made, and I did correct it. At one point, the home health aide is talking about her salary. She doesn't get paid very much. And I think at one page in the beginning, I had her making 13 and a quarter. And then we mentioned it again 60 pages later, and I said 13.50. But fortunately, I got it in the editing. So if anybody out there is thinking, I want to write something, make sure you keep a file of all the characters and all the little minutia points that may come back to haunt you if you get them wrong.
That's what Dick did. He had the outline for the book, and then he had the subset characters, all the characters listed, who they are, blah blah blah, and all those details.
Yeah, I guess I wish I did that, because it's sure would save you time. But
it made it easier when he sat down to write.
Yeah, I think it would. The only thing is you can't let the outline be your prisoner.
Right. You got to go with your.
Yeah, you got to go. But I just, for a better reason, this book was even worse. This book.
Yeah, talk about this.
Yeah, well, this book tells some things aren't meant to be. We learn about the life of a guy named John Gothier. When we meet him, he's a Catholic priest. And we meet him in 1961 in a small, again, same location, Providence, Vermont, in this book also. But then we get his backstory after that. And his backstory is he's working on a Vermont farm in 1928 and 29.
In Providence?
In East Providence, because Providence is the big city.
May I be honest? Where is, don't yell, I don't want any letters. Where is Providence?
There's no Providence.
Oh,
it's
there
fictional.
is? Oh, thank God.
No, it's fictional.
There were little places that.
No, it's sort of based on Rutland and
okay.
and then so like Rutland, West
Good,
Rutland,
so
Barry,
bad.
East Barry, that kind of thing. So we get his backstory. But when I sat down to write the second published novel, my intention was not to write about a Catholic priest. Not even remotely was thinking of that. What I planned on writing was a coming-of-age novel based on 4 or 5 nitwit 12-year-old boys who are kind of loosely based on my friends and me. And again, when I sat down to write the first chapter, it took me no time at all. I knew exactly what I wanted. But then when I read the chapter, the way I work is probably not the most efficient. I write a chapter, then I read it several times and get my ideas for the next chapter. Then I read that one several times for the third chapter. So I read the first chapter over. And I'm thinking, I kind of like this priest better than I like these kids. So I totally switched my focus, but I wanted to keep the kids and the priest. So then my next challenge was, okay, you're going to write about a priest. What are you going to write about? When I told people I was going to write about a priest, unfortunately, because of the world that we live in, almost everybody thought I was going to write about some priest abusing a kid.
Right.
Not even a remoteness. The priest in this book is a good man, and all his colleagues are good men too. So I nixed writing about day-to-day priesthood, because I thought that would be way over my head. So I decided to go get his backstory and what led him to become a priest.
Right?
And so he lived through poverty. He's a rich young man with rich parents. He's hiding out from them in Vermont, which 1929 was really rural. So he's hiding out from his parents, and he's trying to find himself. And he comes to Vermont, he stays a couple of years, and he falls in love a few times and fails. And one of the reasons he fails is he falls in love with his boss's wife. So that's
Not good.
That's kind of doomed. And you know he's failed because when you meet him, he's a priest. So you know in the second chapter, so this isn't giving anything away. You know in the second chapter when we go back, and as the chapter goes on and he falls in love with his boss's wife, you know that's not going to work out because you've met him as a priest, and also the title of the book kind of tells you that. So in writing the second book, my challenge was a couple of things. One is I'm not a farmer, and much of the book takes place on a dairy farm. But I did have a friend, however, who parents and she and her parents ran a dairy farm in Richmond for for 100 years. Their family. So she proofed it for me and made lots of mistakes. I had a lot of mistakes, but hopefully they're all corrected. So that was one issue there, was how do I deal with that correctly? The other issue is, as a priest, I did want to get into an issue that's been written about many, many times, thousands of times, was why do bad things happen to good people, and why? So the priest spends a lot of his time wondering, okay, why do bad things happen? What's going on here? Am I making a difference as a priest? So that was a theme, and I wanted to do that, but I didn't want to do it in a heavy-handed way. Because if I did, it would come off as a boring sermon, like I don't know, reading the Butcher Job or something. So that was a challenge, to try to make sure that it wasn't done heavy-handedly, but we got at that issue. Also, the whole love triangle thing between the farmer, his wife, and the protagonist. But also, he eventually, when that fails, he turns out to be just as equally stupid move. He falls in love with her sister. So he's he just doesn't know how to do it.
Is he a priest at this point?
No, he's still a farmhand. He becomes a priest after he realizes he really has to leave the farm. He goes back to his family in Connecticut, and it's during the Depression, and he spends most of his time working for his dad, firing people, because it's the Depression. And that just gets to him. Week after week after week, he's letting more men go and more men go, and it just eats him alive. So he then decides he wants to become a priest, and when he becomes a priest, he thinks he's going to save the world, but he finds out being a priest there's a lot of minutia and mundane stuff. He has to deal with these 5 boys resurface, and he has to deal with them, and they're kind of pains in the butts. They do stupid stuff. He's always dealing with them. They're breaking into the church, stealing the wine, and drinking the wine. And there's this tunnel that goes from the school to the church. It's like 70, 80 feet, and the boys crawl into it and get stuck. And so a lot of what he deals with in life is the stuff we all deal with. Just kind of annoying stuff that we deal with in our daily work. But at the same time, he does start, for example, breakfast. And he finds that many of the churchgoers in his church, at first they really think it's a great idea. This is what Christ would do. But then they've got a lot of homeless hanging around the church. And a lot of the parishioners think, this isn't such a good idea. We don't really want them here. So and I think those are the kind of stuff that most priests deal with. Doubt and stuff like that. In fact, I did get, I ended up switching editors. My very first editor for this book, she wrote me a letter, and she actually wrote me a 3-page, I don't know, thesis, whatever, telling me why no priest would doubt God as much as my priest does. So I was like, oh God,
maybe not.
So I went to Earl, who's the minister at the Good Shepherd Church he's the priest of the Good Shepherd Church in Barrie. And I said, you got to read this, because I've got someone tell me it's like priests wouldn't do this. He said, no, of course we do that. Of course we.
Yeah,
We
I love
wonder.
Earl, for the record.
Yeah.
Don't you think
Yeah.
he's wonderful?
Yeah, he's
he
great.
and Elizabeth, good grief.
Yeah, no, he's a great priest.
Yeah.
So that was, so I did get some doubts about that, but he assured me no. In fact, I don't know if you, the Catholic magazine, the Roman Catholic
Yeah.
Church has a quarterly magazine,
Yep.
and they wrote a really nice article about it in their January issue,
About who?
about my book.
Oh, wonderful.
I thought they'd think, because he sometimes questioned it. His best friend is the bishop. He sometimes questions that both he and the bishop drink a little more than maybe they could or should. But they're good men. They just have flaws like everybody else.
Right.
And I thought that I don't know why, but I thought that the Catholic Church might not like the book, but the review was just really
That's
positive.
great.
I was really pleased
I
with it.
didn't find it. I'll have to look it
Well,
up.
yeah,
because-
I think it's called Vermont Catholic, I think.
Oh,
or
right, I'll
Vermont
have to look
Catholic
at it.
Magazine.
Yep.
But in their quarterly issue, in their January issue, they have a real nice article about that.
I think it's just very difficult to be a priest in the Catholic Church, I think. And this is a quick story. We had a priest show up at Holy Family Church in Florham Park, New Jersey. He could have been on GQ. He was, no, seriously, he was unbelievable. And he left to go somewhere like Samoa because the women wouldn't leave him alone. And
Okay.
he said, I'm human. He said, I got to get out of here.
Actually, for each book I had to do some research for. And for some things aren't meant to be, I actually went online and watched several videos and also read several articles by priests
Right,
who were dealing with the issue of bad things happening to good people,
right.
doubt by the priests, and there was really some good stuff in there. So I did a fair amount of the internet has really made research when you're writing a book.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Really nice.
Yeah.
And same with, in this book, I've got a bed bath scene. Now sounds simple, but I wanted to get it right. So I went and I watched 3 or 4 videos of home health aides and nursing home aides giving bed baths, and where you start,
I
and
see.
the right way that you
Right.
do it.
Yep.
And so I got so immersed in that I wrote maybe my first draft. The bed bath scene took up 7 or 8 pages, and the editor said, nobody's going to read that. You need to get it down to a page.
Yeah.
And so I did, but I wanted to get it correct, and so I did watch a lot of
great.
videos. Another thing about that is the reason I chose a home health aide rather than a nurse. I wanted initially to do it from the perspective of a nurse, but I knew I'd be way, way, way over my head. What home health aides do, although greatly skilled people to do it, it's stuff I can get my hands around. A bed bath, a bandage change, cleaning someone's house,
Right.
and cooking for someone.
Yeah.
That stuff I could understand. And also, in addition, when I worked for the VNAs, I wrote an online test for staff on boundary issues, what you can and can't do. So that stuff was in my head, and I was able to translate that work into the book. But I did have to do a fair amount of research, and watching the bed baths and the way that, I can't remember now, but the way that you do it, from where you start and where you end, and
Interesting.
how you do a room, it means something to do it correctly. So I wanted to make sure I got it. And I've gotten very positive comments from people who work in home health.
I wonder if that's you're pushing it all out. So
Yeah, well, I
so
can't remember
you're-
I can't remember now, but you have to do it in a certain way
Yeah.
to make sure that everything is
Everything's clean. You're
clean.
not pushing
Yeah.
it back on.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's good. I have a Center for Vermont Home Health and Hospice. Are they part of? I should know this. Are they part of the VNAs?
Yeah, well, see, the VNAs was the trade. The VNAs of Vermont was the trade association. So at the time that I started in 1983, maybe 81, I don't remember. At the time I started, there were 18 home health agencies in Vermont. When I left, there were 10.
Oh.
And I think there's only 8 now.
Really?
Because of mergers.
Because the
one
need
in
is
the-
there.
You had Brattleboro town, Brattleboro City had its own, Chester had its own VNA, Woodstock had its own VNA when I started, Springfield had its own. They all merged into one the VNAs of the Upper Valley, and then Rutland now runs Bennington agency, and I think they also run St. Albans. I'm not sure about that.
Well, there's a stretch.
Yeah, but they went from 18 agencies to 10.
Wow.
And it's all mostly because of the demands from Medicare. Medicare made life pretty difficult for the small agencies. Difficult to survive
Because
financially.
I was on the board of Central Vermont Home Health and Hospice, and one time one of the home aid people asked if we wanted to go with them for the day. Whoa.
Yeah.
Speaking of that list you just read, I mean,
Well,
whoa, what they do.
one of the things that when I worked there, each year I went out on about a dozen visits.
Yeah.
And I did that to make sure to remind myself why I was doing this.
Yeah, that'll do
And
it.
some of the people I visited, like for example, the PT who did the dancing with the
Right.
women. I also met a fellow who wanted to show me his army suit from the Korean War. And so he was really proud of it, and he put it on. Of course, it didn't fit him. His belly was much bigger
Right.
at
Relate to
85
that.
than it
Well,
was
moving
at
on.
85 than it was at 22.
Right.
But he's very proud of that. So I kind of put that scene
Nice.
in the book. And there's also I met a guy in Newport, a wheelchair guy, very aggressive, really nice guy, and he's in the book, or that type of character is in the book too. But the character in my book is a little more ornery than the guy that I met. But a lot of the visits that I went to, I tried to remember them and put them into the
That's
book.
great. You never know, though. I mean, when I went on one of the tours, we arrive at a McMansion,
Oh yeah.
and with the fancy car in the driveway, and I'm thinking, what? Seriously? What could possibly be wrong? We were helping his wife learn how to use the bathroom because she was, she just kind of, I don't know what the diagnosis was, but she just couldn't remember. And I thought, well, I should maybe change my mind. You have no idea what's behind that door.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter about money either. People just...
Yeah, well, there's a scene in the scene where they get rid of 39 cats, and that's
Ooh.
based on, I think it was a Chester VNA, I can't remember which one, but they had a house where they got
Oh, I
rid
was
of
going to say they went in and there were 30.
39 cats. And they actually, believe it or not, found homes for all of them. I was
Really?
like, whoa, I can't
But
believe
that
they did
home must have been...
Well, it was
Oy.
needed, the cats needed to go.
Yeah, I would think so.
And
Wow.
the heavy guy, in the beginning, there's a really heavy guy who she finds dead. And that was based on a case in, several places, but in I think it was the Chittenden at the time, the Chittenden VNA. I think they had some heavy guy that they had a hard time getting him out the door because he had gotten so large.
Yeah, oh my word.
And so those kind of thinking were incorporated into the book. This book is different. This second book is not so much based on thing I remembered or experienced, but things that came up into my mind. The thread of the kids, you have 80% or 60% of the book is sort of the love story kind of thing. And that is just from my imagination. 40% of the book is this priest dealing with these annoying boys. And that is somewhat based on my friends and me. The drinking of the wine. I mean, every altar boy did that. The tunnel thing happened. There was a tunnel from the Immaculate Heart of Mary School to the church. At least I remember there being one. A big rite of passage was to crawl through that tunnel in the dark. And some of the stuff. What I did put in the book, which never happened, is the priest who's a frustrated writer. He's written a lot of novels and never got anything published, and he helps the kid become a better writer. He teaches the kid, how to show and not tell, how to what's important in the book with focus, that kind of thing.
Is that sort of the theme of the book? So at the end of the book, the boys are growing up and the priest is satisfied.
Yeah, at the end of the
happy?
book, well, without giving everything away, the boy is a successful novelist.
Nice.
And the priest, I don't tell the ending on that, but
Okay.
the priest, he goes through a priesthood and he retires.
Yeah.
And his friend, the bishop, they get old together. The bishop and the priest are really good friends, and we kind of watch
Nice.
them get old together.
That's right. Well, having been brought up as you were
Yeah.
within the Catholic Church, a lot of this rings rings a bell and rings true.
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up, I went to the Immaculate Heart of Mary Church school from K through 6, and then I remained an altar boy right through high school.
Did you?
So obviously, if anything formed my character, it was probably that school.
Yeah, right. Two friends of mine went become nuns. And we had an 8th grade graduation, believe it or not, from Catholic school. And I thought, well, who will remember whatever from 8th grade? We walked in, we picked up like we had never left. It was the most bizarre thing. In 8th grade, it wasn't like high school. And you learn a lot.
Of course,
makes you who
Facebook
you
has
are.
made things, you reconnect with people you haven't connected with
Right.
forever.
Yeah.
I've gotten friends that I hadn't heard from since I was 16 or 16.
Wow.
17. You know, you're 17, I leave high school, people you never see again, and all of a sudden, I learned a little bit about their lives through Facebook, I guess.
Yeah, it's a great tool. It really is. It's fabulous. So is there more writing in the future?
Well, maybe. I've got a book. The second novel I tutored that wasn't very good, it was about how adults have screwed up sports for kids. They've turned kids sports into a profession. You know, full-time,
Right.
full-time coaches. You hardly ever see kids just playing. And that was the second novel I wrote, but it wasn't very good, so I put it aside. I rewrote it a couple years later, still not very good, put it aside. And then I rewrote it again last year.
Oh,
It's still not good enough. I need to focus more on the kids and less on the coach.
interesting.
So I'm probably someday going to rewrite it again. But we'll see.
It's very impressive that you can look at it and criticize yourself.
Well,
I think that's unusual.
well,
don't
you know,
think?
it's okay. This third is the third version, and it's still. I try to step. You have to step away from it. And
Yeah.
Also, I do use beta readers. I send it out to people and say, "What do you think?" And I didn't for the first book because I was doing that sort of. No, I never thought that would see the light of day. In fact, when I sent it to a publisher, I sent it to 3 publishers, and I never thought anything would happen. It was during the COVID, and then I got a no, and a maybe and a yes. I'm thinking, are you crazy? This is like weird.
Cool.
The maybe people wrote me a note and said, we like your book, but we're short-staffed with COVID, so could you give us 6 months? And then the other company
Said
said
yes.
they'd do it, and I'm going to them. I guess I'd give advice for anybody. If you're writing because you want to get published, you might want to rethink, because that's not the reason to write. Because most
Interesting.
books, most people probably won't get published, or at least not traditionally published. So if you want to write because you have a story to tell and you want to tell it, and it's like painting. You know, you do this beautiful painting.
Right.
You're doing
Just
it
for yourself, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So anybody who's thinking, well, I want to write a book, make sure you have the right reason. The right reason is
Interesting.
it's something I want to tell.
Yeah.
You may or may not get published, and even if you get published, you're probably not going to make much money, unless you're in a national company, and that's really hard. And getting an agent is very difficult.
And there's illustrations. The book, the front cover. Who does all that?
The
does the
companies did
publisher
that. No, the company did that. This was done by a company that's since gone out of business, and I switched it to Rootstock. This initially was a company out of Arkansas, and they did the cover and stuff, but they went out of business last year, so Rootstock took over the book. And then this is Rootstock out of Montpelier. They did the cover. I like that. I like that
Oh,
cover.
I think I've talked to her. A friend of mine wrote a book and wants to get it published. But the first one we dealt with was really ripping her off. And it took us a little while to figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
And we're like, well, how do you know what's good and what's
Well,
not
you
good?
don't know. To get traditionally published is difficult. This is hybrid. In other words, it's sort of self-publishing is here, traditionally publishing is here, hybrid is sort of in the middle. In hybrid, you pay for everything, but they do everything. In self-publishing, you do your editing, you do your own, or you find an editor, you find art people, you find layout, you do have to do all the work. That's all done, but then you pay for it. But the advantage is you get higher royalties. So for something like this, you might get 60, 70%, where if you're traditionally published, you get 15.
Right.
So, but you have to get your money back to make it break even. But so it's a gamble. The publishing industry is certainly way different than it was 10 or 15 and 20 years ago. I never wanted to go the self-published route. If I wasn't going to find somebody, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want
I'm trying to think, through Amazon?
You can do through Amazon. Yeah, I mean, Amazon has publish as you sell them books. But again, you still need someone you really need someone to edit your book.
Right.
I don't care how good a writer you are. If you don't have somebody edit your book, you're going to find stuff that's
right. And you mentioned,
mistakes.
could you talk about the group that you sent it to read?
They're just friends.
Beta?
No, just friends.
Okay.
Oh, no, my sister,
I
my
see.
daughter.
I thought there was an actual group.
No. My sister, my daughter, some friends. My daughter was really useful because in both books she was useful. A lot of things I'm not, and one thing I'm not is a young woman. So
We can tell that right
yeah.
away. Yes.
So I had some scenes in there. I sent it to my daughter, say, look, could you look this over? And actually, she said, my portrayal of the woman as a woman wasn't the problem. My portrayal was I had too many geezer things in there.
I'm sorry,
I had geezer things. Only somebody my age would write.
Right.
For example,
geezer.
I had the woman waking up to an alarm clock.
Oh, no.
My daughter said, please, Dad, nobody wakes up to an alarm clock anymore. She did all that kind of stuff.
That's great.
There's also a scene in here where there's a girls' night out. She and her friends go out on a bar.
Yeah.
My daughter wrote the first chart. There's no way in the world I could have gotten that right.
Right.
So I asked my daughter, could you write a draft of, because I knew what I wanted. I wanted a chapter in there where the protagonist and friends go out to a bar, but that was way over, I'm too old, I'm not a female. And so my daughter wrote it, and then I rewrote it in my own style. In the second book, there's a scene in here which my daughter corrected on me. The woman had had a baby, and that was only a few months later. The baby's like 4 months old. And she wants to impress someone. She wants to look really nice. And I have her getting dressed and my daughter wrote me and said, Dad, she had a baby 3 months ago.
All right.
So she added a line, I can't remember the exact line, but it's something like, the woman looks in the mirror and she's a little kind of discouraged of what she, and so my daughter, so if anybody reads that and thinks, you sexist guy, put that in there, my daughter actually wrote that.
That's funny.
Because she said,
geezer stuff.
Yeah, well, she said, you're not the same person prior, especially 4 months after the birth than you were before.
Well, I have for boys. I have two grandsons, and one's 28, one's 30. Oh, Grandma. And can we do this, Grandma?
Yeah, so actually
we don't
I had
do that anymore.
So the beta readers corrected silly mistakes like that.
Yeah.
And the woman on the farm who ran the farm, she corrected a whole lot. Earl, our minister, he corrected a few things. I had some denominations wrong. I had certain denominations believing something, and they were wrong.
Oh, was it wrong group?
Wrong one. So he corrected and said, no, that's in this group.
Yeah.
So I had to change. Well, I'm glad he did it.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
wouldn't have,
Somebody would pick it up and not be happy.
if I had been self-published, I might not have caught that.
Right.
So I'm glad I had other people.
Yeah.
You need other people to think, to make sure that it makes sense.
Yeah.
Make sure that the flow of what's going on makes sense. You think you know it, but because you're so immersed in the book,
for sure. You have
you
ownership.
forget.
Yeah.
You forget. You miss things.
Yep.
You say something you think is clear, and someone says, "That makes no sense."
Well, that was good. Nice of
whatsoever."
Earl. That's not any.
So the only thing is, with my sister, she died a couple of years ago, but she was one of my first readers in this book. It's all done in third person to the last chapter. Then in the last chapter, the priest sums up the world, his world, and everybody else's world. My sister so lobbied for me to have the young boy who became a writer be the view of that. She can bug me. Got to change the final. Got to change the final chapter, but I didn't. That's at some point.
So, what are some things that, or can you give this away, that aren't meant to be?
Well, falling in love with your boss's wife and having that be successful.
That's it. That's true.
Is something that's probably not meant to be.
Yeah, probably
and then
not.
Falling in love with her sister, probably not also. And the priest, I think, he writes a novel that he gives to them when he leaves. He gives to the woman and to her sister, just as like a gift. And then he finds that novel many years later. It never gets published.
Well, I typed in some things aren't meant to be, assuming I was going to get to your book, and I wound up with a definition of what that means.
What does it mean?
And well, it's pretty much what you want something, but it's not going to happen. So good luck to you.
Yeah.
But it was a whole thing about what that means, and I thought, my goodness, it's a phrase that people use, obviously, and it isn't meant to be.
Strangely enough, both titles came to me fairly easily.
Oh, right.
And sometimes a book publisher will change the titles.
Right.
But in this case, this was Touchpoint out of Arkansas, and now it's Rootstock, did not change the title, and Rootstock kept with this title.
I would find if I was a writer with ownership that I'd struggle with an editor wanting to
coming up with a
change
good title. I'm 70,000 words into a book about a relationship right now. Whether it'll see the light of day, I don't know. But if it does, I have no idea what the title's going to be. And someone could come up with a better one. I think for this point, I'm coming up with For Better or Worse. But maybe that'll be the final title, if it gets anywhere. I'm not going to, I think these two, without sounding like an arrogant jerk, I think these two books are pretty good. I wouldn't want to publish something that I don't think was at least up to this
I have
standard.
them on my Kindle. I just haven't gotten to them yet. I was going to do it this week.
I get a headache reading on Kindle. I can't do that.
The what?
I get a headache reading on Kindle.
Do you? Oh, I love Kindle.
Yeah, I can read an article. I can't read a book.
What I like is when you open it up, it goes right back to the page that you were reading. There's just some good things about it.
My wife does Kindle all the time.
All the guests that come on who read books, I've got them on
Kindle.
who write books, they're on my Kindle.
Oh, that's good.
It's just so
Have you had a chance to read it?
Well, that's it. No, I haven't, because we had a little
I'll be
problem.
curious. When you do, we'll see
I
what
will.
you think.
I had a little problem in my house this week with my puppy, so nothing mattered this week. I'm going to have a weekend from hell.
Reading my book.
Yeah, I will be glad to, and I'll tell you about it, because I particularly like the one about the Catholic Church, maybe because that was that's a very intricate, I can't say the word, very intricate thing to write about.
Yeah, I'm surprised that I did it. If you want to know the truth, the fact that I went down that road surprised me. This book, I kind of knew the characters, and I kind of knew their stories, so it wasn't that hard to read. This book, I told you, the first chapter was going to be a coming-of-age book. Yeah. So when it wasn't, every chapter was as much surprise to me as this to the reader.
That's so fascinating.
I was 60% through the book when I figured out the ending. Yeah. This book, I knew the ending at the beginning.
I was going to say, I know somebody that would write, for some reason, I know a lot of people who write from the back, he wrote the ending last. First. And then
I did with this book.
Then he walked into
this book. I wrote the ending first. Well, I wrote the beginning. I wrote the very first chapter and the very last chapter, and then everything else was a surprise. This book, I didn't even know how it was going to end until I was almost at the end.
That is very.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
It's unusual, but it's It's hard to imagine. That's strange.
Probably, if I were a more disciplined person, I probably would have outlined it and known that.
Right.
But I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm more of a, all right. I think I said online, they call them, people like me are seat of the pants. You sit down and you just type.
Right?
There's organizers,
and
there's seat of the pants writers, and I happen to be the
second. Well, it obviously worked out.
It probably, if I had been more organized, probably would have taken so long.
Are they on sale at?
They're on sale
at Amazon. Good old Amazon.
They're on Amazon. If people want to buy it, the best thing for their town is to go to your local bookstore.
So it's around in the bookstore?
Well, if they don't have any copies left or don't have any now, they can order it for you. It's not a problem.
That's great.
And it's on Amazon. If anybody wants a signed copy, they can go on my webpage and see my address and send me a check.
And there's a nice explanation. I love Amazon because they give you a really nice explanation of the books, and that's always kind of good to read.
The only thing with Amazon, the royalties are so much lower than you get. Oh boy, much lower than
I would imagine that's the case.
Yeah, but I don't know so much for the second book, but the first book, of all the places, the first company gave me store by store. No store was even close to the sales of Amazon.
That's
That's
the
the
first
world
place-
we live in.
First place I go to.
Yeah.
I figure when I call, they say, "Oh, it's Pat again," and they're paying attention. They know my name.
Well, the best thing for your town or for your local bookstore is to support them, I think.
Yeah.
And they can. I know Bear Pond has them. I know Last Chapter in Barry, Next Chapter in Barry has them. Some of the other stores had them. I don't know if they still have them because it was a year ago. But if they don't have them, they can order them
Well,
for
it
you.
means they were sold. Whatever's there, that's
Whatever.
great. So we have a few minutes left. You want to just wrap it up a little bit about what you'd like me, why they should buy the book? Because there's some messages there.
Well, I hope the books are fun to read. I mean, I think that's the key to a book.
Yeah.
In fact, on my website, I've got I don't know why I put this on there, but one day I was bored, so I put up my 100 favorite books.
Wow.
And I realized my favorite books are books I simply enjoy reading. They're not necessarily heavy-duty books.
Yeah.
They're not, they're books that I think are simply written. My style of writing is fairly conversational. So if you like books with lots of dialogue, I do that. My books also my vocabulary is pretty simple. I bet if you...
Oh, I could understand.
If you do one of those tests, the level, I bet it's 8th grade, 9th grade. I don't have a big enough vocabulary to do anything else.
That's good for some of us, may I say.
Well, I try to write, not necessarily what I enjoy, because some books I enjoy, I just don't have the ability to write the way those writers write. But I think if you write, you have to write whatever's comfortable for you, whatever, what you could put down easily, or nothing's easy about it. For example, you're trying to make dialogue real as it can be, but you think about it, all dialogue in a book is really fake. Because if you were to tape your family, say, at Thanksgiving, we interrupt each other, we go off track,
Right.
a lot of stuff we say makes no sense whatsoever. So if anybody says the dialogue is real, it's not really real. It's simulated real. It's real in a sense.
Yeah.
So what I try to do, and I had to go through it a lot, is one of the traps you can fall into as a writer is that everybody sounds like you. And you got to give everybody their own voice. You got to go back through and have people have
That's
different
very
words of the same thing.
insightful, Peter.
Well, we all do. I mean, I go through the book and I said, wow, they all sound like me. So I had to go through and change a lot of the dialogue.
That's great.
And we all have things we say a lot, but I can't have everybody saying that a lot.
Right.
So it's important that each character is defined by what they say and how
Did
they
you
act.
ever study this in school?
Nah.
It just
Well, I did.
very insightful. I'm impressed.
I remember in high school, I took some courses in college too, but in high school, I remember the teacher talking about foreshadowing, plotting, and I totally ignored it all. But then I realized as a writer, whoa, foreshadowing is really important.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Plotting's really important. So a lot of the stuff that I totally ignored in high school came,
Ta-da.
and then I did take a course in college. It was my most useful course. I think it was called expository writing. It was like we would describe a room. We would describe how to fly a kite. We would describe that kind of writing you have to get good at. And there are some scenes in the book, for example, some guy's house is trashed and stuff like that. So I had to describe that, but I initially described it in 8 or 9 pages, but that's too many.
Yeah.
So I ended up trying to cut it down into 2 paragraphs. So you have to decide, if I were going to describe this room, what do I put in? What don't I put in? You can't put everything in. So one of the challenges to write is to decide what stays and what doesn't stay.
And what's really important.
Yeah, what's
I
really
find that
important.
very hard if I've been asked to cut that, if I write a commentary, and it's like 650 words or whatever, they're, oof.
Yeah, well, one of the things for working for newspapers is you do write short stuff.
Yeah.
I write about once a week for the Times-Argus right now.
What do you write about? What?
Oh, whatever they tell me to write about, basically. And most of the stories I write are 650 words,
Yeah, right.
700 words.
Yeah.
So what do you put in? What don't you put in? Because you could go almost anybody you interview, you could write 3,000 words about them.
For sure.
But nobody wants to read through
Right.
about most things. So you get. I think writing for a newspaper, even though nobody does that anymore, is a good laboratory on how to write about.
Right.
or
I used to write for the World of Gary was great with letting
Yeah.
me write stuff and
Yeah.
but they didn't have 650. That was the Times Argus. They had less, I think.
It's smaller.
In the world smaller. That was even harder.
Yeah,
to do that.
occasionally, some of the stories I go like 1,100, but for the most
Wow.
part, for the most part, I try to do 6 to 750,
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
yeah, that's about right. Well, I thank you very much for coming on the show. This has been a real treat.
Well, thank you.
This has been great. This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is Listening Beyond the Soundbites. Please look up Peter Cobb and his 2 books, and you can take it from there. See you next week, and thanks for tuning in. Bye.